A young man with black hair looks off into the distance, a gentle smile on his face. Below, a cheerful elf girl with blonde hair and a basket waves enthusiastically, welcoming him to the village. The story's title page features the main characters, a smiling young man, a happy elf girl, and a large white wolf, all enjoying a peaceful day. The scene flashes back to 1 week ago, on the outskirts of the royal capital. Here we are introduced to Alfred Rint, an S-class sorcerer in his 30s who is currently taking it easy at home, secluded from the world. Someone knocks and announces they are coming in. Alfred looks over, recognizing the visitor as he says, "Oh, Luca." The visitor is Luca, an S-class adventurer who is also a swordsman and doctor. She stands in the doorway, exasperated, asking Alfred why he's still idling about. Luca scolds him, saying he sounds like a stinking old man, and points out that their comrades, Cruz and Urena, have already left to fight monsters. Alfred casually replies that they haven't changed since their teenage years. Luca's tone softens as she asks about his knee. Alfred claims it hurts but is manageable, but Luca, with a doctor's insight, immediately calls out his lie. Alfred's mind drifts back to a past battle. He remembers his time with the young hero party, on the verge of defeating the Demon King. His role was to draw the Demon King's attention while the others prepared the final blow. In that critical moment, just as the Demon King was about to collapse, he launched a final counterattack, striking Alfred directly in the knee with an arrow. And that's how his knee was injured. After that battle, he and his party immediately became celebrated heroes, honored with a grand parade. He was showered with accolades, receiving a noble rank and medals from the royal family, and from the Adventurer Guild, he was granted the first S-rank title in 200 years. Back in the present, Alfred expresses his gratitude for the honors, but Luca gives him a grim diagnosis. His knee injury is permanent and won't heal for the rest of his life, not even with healing magic, because it's the result of a Demon King's curse. Luca leaves, telling him not to work too hard. Alfred wonders if she just came to make fun of him. But then he sees the medicine she left behind and smiles, realizing she went out of her way to deliver it. Alfred lies back in bed with a sigh. After working as an adventurer for so many years, he feels entitled to a short break, but the throbbing pain in his knee is a constant torment. Suddenly, a loud and imposing man with an elaborate mustache barges in, shouting for Lord Rint, saying there is something he'd like to ask of him. It's the Lord Marshal. He explains that even with the Demon King gone, villainous monsters are still on the loose. He wants to entrust Lord Rint with leading a newly formed Wizard Knight order, calling it an enormous honor. Alfred gracefully declines, explaining it's difficult for him to fight in his current state. The Lord Marshal laments this but quickly pivots, asking him to train the sorcerers of the royal court instead. Somehow, Alfred gets a bad feeling about this. As he tries to slip away, he is immediately stopped by another official, the Grand Guildmaster. The Guildmaster tells Alfred his plan to form a new adventurers guild in the former Demon King's territory, and by all means, he wants Alfred to become the guild leader there. This is bad. Really bad. Alfred is being bombarded with requests from all sides. He collapses onto his bed, completely overwhelmed. The stress causes the pain in his knee to flare up violently. He grits his teeth, crying out that his knee hurts like hell. He made pledges for the country and the king, but he can't catch a break. He realizes his S-rank title has become a trap and decides that his own health must come first. Lying in his bed under the moonlight, Alfred desperately thinks. He needs a way to get a break, a good way to slack off. Finally, an idea strikes him and he sits up, resolved. Having made up his mind, he gets ready to depart, grabbing his cloak and satchel, a plan already forming. With a determined gaze, Alfred sets his plan in motion. He is putting the royal capital behind him, but not just running away aimlessly. He is heading towards a specific destination to secure his peaceful retirement. After considering it all night, Alfred arrives at the Adventurers Guild. He figures that if he just accepts a guild request, he can slack off without those around him causing a fuss. A young receptionist looks at him in surprise. He has 3 conditions for the perfect request. It must look easy, come from a village far from the royal capital, and it has to be a long-term job. He scans the board and quickly finds one that fits. He presents his choice to the receptionist, who is shocked. It's a request meant for F-rank adventurers, the lowest possible rank. The job is to act as a guard for Murg Village, which is being troubled by wolves and wild boar. The reward is room and board, with the added bonus of a hot spring. Alfred thinks it's absolutely perfect. The receptionist is flustered, explaining that it's early and she's the only one there. But Alfred insists it's an emergency. Internally, he celebrates finding his perfect escape. With the quest secured, Alfred walks out into the street. The reward is small, but he doesn't mind, as he'll receive a pension anyway. He pulls down his hood, a smirk on his face, ready to savor his brief village life. A week passes. After transferring carriages, Alfred finds himself at the edge of a forest, consulting his compass. The road ends here. He knows the walk will be hard on his injured knee, but he decides he can endure it as long as he walks slowly. He sets off into the woods. Despite the long walk ahead, his spirits are high. The weather is beautiful, and he feels great, relishing his freedom. 3 hours later, his initial excitement has worn off. He looks around, annoyed, realizing there's nothing but trees as far as the eye can see. Suddenly, he stops. He hears the sound of a person and a beast nearby. From the sound of it, he can tell the situation is serious. He hears a determined voice cry out from the woods, shouting that she will not be beaten so easily. Alfred cautiously approaches the sound. Peeking through the foliage, he's surprised to see the pointed ears of an elf. He takes in the whole scene. A young elven girl is desperately trying to fend off 2 wolves with a stick. Alfred observes her. She's putting on a brave face, but her trembling hands betray her fear. One of the wolves sees its chance and prepares to attack. As the wolf lunges, Alfred steps out from the trees with a smirk, thinking to himself that he's managed to attract some trouble already. Alfred calmly steps in front of the girl, telling her he's got it handled. He declares that for enemies like these, he doesn't even need to use magic as a wolf pounces at him. With a single, powerful punch, he sends the wolf flying, remarking on what a spineless creature it is. The elven girl is stunned, then thanks him profusely. He tells her not to worry. She introduces herself as Millet, and he introduces himself as Alfred, asking if she is all right. Overjoyed and relieved, Millet thanks him once again with a bright smile, calling him Alsan. Alfred smiles warmly. He reflects that after so many years as an adventurer, he's used to being thanked, but he's still genuinely glad to hear it. He asks why she is in such a dangerous place alone. She explains that her little sister has a fever and is in great pain, but the village ran out of medicine, so she came to gather herbs. Millet explains that everyone in the village warned her it was dangerous because wolves appear. Alfred listens to her story, a determined look on his face. Alfred asks if she managed to collect the herbs. Millet shakes her head sadly, showing him her nearly empty basket. She explains that due to a recent increase in wolves, the area has already been picked clean by animals and monsters, leaving her with almost nothing. Seeing that it's already past noon, Alfred asks if her quest is hopeless. Millet admits she might find herbs deeper in the mountains, but is too scared to go alone. Alfred looks at the determined girl and internally debates if he has the heart to leave her to fend for herself. Alfred weighs his options. If he helps her, he won't make it to the village before sunset. But if he leaves her, she'll almost certainly be eaten by monsters, and that would weigh too much on his conscience. Millet begins to walk away, but Alfred calls out to her. He offers to help her search for the herbs. He tells her he's not in a rush, and that she'll feel more at ease with an adult around. Millet is overjoyed, thanking him again. She's so eager she grabs his hand to lead the way. She cheerfully leads him deeper into the forest. Alfred can't help but smile, thinking she seems quite cheerful. They arrive at an area where plants grow abundantly, but something seems off. Alfred notes that it doesn't smell like there are any herbs. He asks for a description, and Millet says it's a green ivy plant shaped like a hand. They soon realize all the herbs in this area have been eaten up as well. Alfred asks if there's anywhere else they can look. Millet apologizes and hesitantly says there is definitely some in a cave about 30 minutes away, but she looks incredibly worried. She confesses the truth. A basilisk has recently settled in that cave. Alfred seems intrigued by the news. A profile of the demonic beast basilisk appears. It's a B-rank monster that turns those who look at it into stone, and its tail and blood are incredibly poisonous. Alfred notes that a B-rank party should be able to handle it. Seeing Millet's fear, Alfred gives her a confident wink and a thumbs up, telling her not to worry. He playfully refers to himself as an old pro at exterminating basilisks. Millet is horrified, yelling that it's too dangerous and that he can't defeat such an enemy in his state. Alfred casually reassures her as they approach the cave entrance. Standing before the dark maw of the cave, Alfred asks if the herb has a scent. Trembling, Millet confirms that it does. Alfred hands her his luggage and tells her to wait for him. He reassures the startled Millet that it's all right, promising to come running if she shouts for help. Alfred ventures into the cave alone. He finds a patch of the herbs untouched and begins to gather them, noting how deep the cavern is. As he moves deeper, he hears a menacing slither and sees the giant, scaled tail of the cave's inhabitant. He calmly remarks, "So it's shown itself, huh?" The massive Birank basilisk confronts him, its demonic eyes glowing in the darkness. The basilisk lunges, but Alfred simply says, "Watch it." A magic circle flares to life, effortlessly deflecting the creature's attack. The basilisk is thrown back, stunned by the powerful defensive magic. Alfred stands calmly, holding the basket of herbs. Having collected enough herbs, Alfred picks up a small rock from the cave floor. He tells the beast that he doesn't particularly harbor a grudge against it, but with a confident smirk he declares, "I am going to enjoy your defeat." The basilisk roars in fury. He enchants the small rock with speed magic and then fires it with a powerful, swift kick. The enchanted projectile strikes the basilisk directly in the head, killing it instantly. Alfred smirks, reflecting that while it's been a long time since he last fought a basilisk, he was still confident in his abilities. He stands at the cave entrance, thinking to himself that he was careful not to pollute the cave, ensuring the precious herbs will continue to grow there for years to come. Millet waits anxiously outside, huddled with Alfred's bag. He calls out to her, and she peeks out from behind a tree, relieved to see him. Alfred emerges, presenting her with a full basket of herbs. Millet is overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking him with a radiant smile. Alfred emerges from the cave, dragging the massive corpse of the basilisk behind him. He casually asks a terrified Millet for help cutting it up. Millet is completely stunned, her eyes sparkling with admiration. She asks in disbelief if he really defeated it, calling him amazing. Alfred seems taken aback by her praise. She continues to shower him with praise, saying he's incredibly powerful and a true expert. Alfred becomes flustered, thinking it's just another day for him, and finding the situation seriously awkward. Millet offers to help him butcher the beast. As she gets ready to help, her cloak falls open, revealing her well-endowed figure. Alfred is momentarily speechless. When Millet asks what's wrong, he quickly turns away, flustered, muttering that they just coincidentally caught his eye before getting back to the task at hand. With the basilisk laid out before them, Alfred remarks on its huge size, calling it a great harvest. Millet stands by, ready to assist. With a practiced hand, Alfred begins to carve the creature. He explains to an attentive Millet that its tail, fangs, and eyeballs can all be sold for a high price. He continues his lesson, explaining that nothing from the beast is wasted. Its hide is useful, its flesh is edible, and its blood can be used as a potent ingredient for medicine. After some time, they've more or less finished butchering the monster. They have a large haul of valuable materials neatly bundled. Alfred gives Millet a high five, telling her she was a great help. As the sun begins to set, Alfred suggests they camp in the now-safe cave for the night. Millet suddenly looks very nervous about the idea. She lets out a shriek and suddenly grabs onto Alfred, trembling with fear. He's completely startled by her reaction. She shyly admits that she's just a little bit afraid of the forest at night. Alfred finds her honest fear rather endearing. With a charming smile, Alfred tells her not to worry. He gallantly declares, "Fear not, for I shall protect you, my Lady Millet." She blushes deeply at his grand statement. Later that evening, they sit around a warm campfire. Millet quietly eats some of the food they prepared while Alfred looks on. Under the light of the moon, Alfred asks if Millet will be okay in the cold. She reassures him that it's a warm season and that she has borrowed his overcoat. Alfred offers her some roasted cheese, but she politely declines. He asks if she's sleepy, but she admits that for some reason, she can't get to sleep. She apologizes, figuring it must be tough for him, since he's not used to sleeping outside. Then, her curiosity gets the better of her, and she asks why he was in that part of the forest. Alfred clarifies if she means the spot where she was being attacked. He explains that he was simply on his way to the village that made the request he accepted. Millet looks thoughtful. Millet worries that he'll be late, but he says it's fine since there's no time limit. Full of energy, she offers to guide him if it's somewhere she knows. Alfred smiles and tells her the place is called Merg Village, asking if she knows it. Millet's expression freezes in shock. Her eyes widen as the realization hits her. With pure shock and excitement, she exclaims, "Merg Village is my village!" Alfred is just as surprised by the incredible coincidence. Millet, meanwhile, is absolutely beaming with joy. "That's a relief to hear," she says happily. "This means that Al-san will be living in Merg Village for a while." Alfred confirms that's how it'll be, much to her delight. As Millet finally drifts off to sleep, her head comes to rest on Alfred's shoulder. He looks down at her with a gentle, caring smile. Leaning against his shoulder, Millet giggles softly in her sleep, a look of pure, peaceful happiness on her face. Looking down at her peaceful, sleeping face, Alfred smiles warmly. He thinks to himself that being a guard might not be so bad after all. It's a job where he'll be able to personally protect people's smiles. As they rest together in the quiet forest, Alfred feels at peace. He resolves to enjoy his new countryside lifestyle, fully absorbed in the carefree atmosphere. The story recaps the life of the veteran sorcerer, who, after defeating the Demon King, was struck by the immortal killing arrow. Fearing for his life as an adventurer, he chose to devote himself to taking a break. However, the upper class in the country wouldn't leave him alone, constantly bothering him. Annoyed, he forcefully left the royal capital to lead a quiet life of leisure as a simple village guard. Thanks to the guidance of an elf girl named Millet, Alfred arrives at a village without getting lost. He looks around and remarks on what a nice place it is, while Millet reassures him that he will grow used to it soon enough. They arrive at Millet's home, where she is greeted warmly by the villagers. They are happy to see she is okay, but are curious about the unfamiliar man accompanying her. Millet enthusiastically introduces the man as Alfred-san. With a big smile, she declares that he is her savior, who is both super strong and super kind. Millet continues to passionately recount Alfred's deeds, telling the amazed villagers how he helped her with intense herb gathering, watched over her all night, and even defeated a basilisk. Alfred becomes incredibly embarrassed by all the praise as the villagers thank him profusely. While they are fawning over him, Millet quickly excuses herself to go prepare some medicine. Suddenly, a voice calls out. It's the village chief, an elderly cat-like man, who says he has heard the story. Alfred is surprised by his sudden appearance. Alfred formally introduces himself as Alfred Rint and states that he has accepted the duty of being a guard for Merg Village, much to the surprise of the chief and the other villagers. The villagers begin to excitedly chatter about having a welcome party that night. The village chief interrupts and offers to guide Alfred to the residence they have prepared for him. The chief leads Alfred to an old building, apologizing for its age. He explains that it also serves as the guardhouse, which Alfred seems to be perfectly fine with. Alfred is pleased to find the place has a roof and even a bed. He then asks the village chief to explain the details of his work. The chief explains that Alfred's main job is simply to sit in front of the gate and enjoy the sun, as they don't get many enemies. Alfred is confused, wondering if the village even needs a guard. The village chief continues, explaining that when villagers head out, he also wants Alfred to stand guard against overpopulating wolves and any bandits, and to help out on the farms during the daytime. The chief adds that while there's a rare chance a battle might break out, he worries a veteran like Alfred might be disappointed. Alfred smiles and reassures him, saying it's fine and that he'll be able to help. The village chief admits that he and the villagers were expecting a much younger man to take the job, so they were a little surprised when Alfred appeared. Alfred now understands their earlier reactions. The chief reveals their scheme. Since young adventurers don't accept requests for a village like this, they were hoping to invite a young man to be the husband of one of the local women and have him move in permanently. The village chief tours Alfred around the village and asks why he volunteered for the job. Alfred simply says he busted his knee in the past. The chief then suggests he relax at the village's hot spring, noting it's great for injuries. That night, the sound of glasses clinking together can be heard as a welcome party is held in the village chief's house, with everyone cheering for the new guard. Alfred has a great time, drinking and celebrating with all the villagers. After the party, they wish him well for the next day as he walks through the quiet town. The night is quiet as the full moon shines down on the village. Back in the guardhouse, Alfred lies in his new bed. As he lies awake, Alfred's senses suddenly pick something up. He realizes that a pack of wolves is approaching and thinks it would be disastrous if the village was harmed on his very first day. Determined to make a good first impression and not be branded as incompetent, Alfred quickly gets dressed and prepares to head out. Without a moment's hesitation, he bursts out of the guardhouse, leaps over the wooden fence, and dashes into the surrounding woods, following the presence he sensed. Deep in the woods, he comes to a halt. His eyes widen in surprise as he finally confronts the source of the disturbance. What stands before him is a pack of wolves led by a splendid-looking magical wolf, far more majestic than the others. Alfred wonders why they are here. Alfred notes that while he's a veteran, he has never encountered such a fabulous magical wolf before. He knows that among aged magical beasts, some can even use magic. As if to prove his point, the alpha wolf lets out a ferocious howl, unleashing a wave of magical energy directly at Alfred. Alfred is momentarily stunned. He realizes the howl was embedded with magic, a force so potent it would have paralyzed any average adventurer on the spot. The wolf pack lunges at him. Alfred, unaffected by the magic, swiftly dodges and weaves through the ferocious assault. He effortlessly fends off the smaller wolves as they attack in a frenzy, while the large alpha wolf watches the exchange with intelligent, calculating eyes. Alfred quickly assesses the situation. He realizes that while they may all be magical wolves, the enormous boss is the only one in the pack that can actually use magic. Considering his options, Alfred decides against using fire or lightning to avoid a forest fire, and dismisses water magic as a pain to handle. He resolves to use a different method to deal with the alpha. He decides to attack by creating hastened magical barriers. However, he's surprised when the agile wolves manage to dodge his attack completely. The alpha wolf closes in again, maneuvering skillfully. Alfred is impressed by its speed and agility, commenting "not bad," as it prepares another strike. A flicker of excitement crosses Alfred's face. After a lifetime of being overwhelmingly powerful, he finds the challenge enjoyable and prepares to engage the beast head-on. Alfred lunges forward, meeting the alpha wolf's attack with a powerful blow of his own, striking it squarely and sending it reeling. With the alpha wolf subdued on the ground, Alfred makes his offer. He states that slaughtering them all would be a piece of cake, but he will let them off the hook if they agree not to harm Merg Village. He reasons that as a high-level magical beast, it should be able to understand human speech. He declares himself a sorcerer, explaining that if he had used his full power from the beginning, the entire pack would have been annihilated by now. He explains his reasoning for the mercy. If he were to kill them, the wild boar population would increase unchecked, laying waste to the village's fields. Therefore, he doesn't mind letting them all go. Alfred pleads with the wolf to listen, adding that it would be a waste to just kill it. He's suddenly shocked to hear a voice in his mind respond, "I understand, powerful child." The wolf is using telepathy. The alpha wolf calmly admits its loss. It acknowledges that it was so thoroughly outmatched that it couldn't even get Alfred to become serious during their fight. Alfred formally introduces himself as Alfred Rint, expressing his respect for the wolf's strength and intellect. The magical beast then makes a request. Since it doesn't have a name, it asks Alfred to give it one. Alfred, with a playful smile, suggests the name Gel Gel. The wolf responds with an unimpressed, deadpan stare, clearly rejecting the silly name. After a few more terrible suggestions like Puffy, Alfred suggests Femme. The wolf accepts this name. Now known as Femme, she swears that as long as she is the alpha, her pack will not attack Merg Village. Alfred takes in the scene. He's surrounded by a pack of 20 wolves, all of whom serve under their powerful leader, Femme. The battle had been swift, with Alfred easily parrying and blocking the attacks from Femme and her pack. Femme offers her head as a trophy to reassure the frightened villagers, as an apology for the disturbance. Alfred is relieved, but has another idea. Femme dismisses the grim joke about her head. Instead, she offers something much more practical as proof of their pact. One of her own large fangs, explaining that showing it to the locals will be enough for them to understand. Gratefully, Alfred accepts the fang. He tells Femme that he'll be in Merg Village for a while and to give him a shout if she has any concerns. To formally seal their new alliance, Femme extends her paw, and they share a firm handshake. Alfred reflects that this is an actual formal handshake between them, not a simple command for a dog to shake a paw. As the radiant sun rises, Femme and her pack depart, leaving Alfred to head back towards the village. Suddenly, Millet's voice calls out to him. Millet greets him with a cheerful smile, expressing her relief. She had been worried sick when he wasn't at the guardhouse for breakfast. Alfred, feeling the fatigue of his sleepless night, groans that he doesn't want to grow old. As they chat, the village chief and other villagers arrive, armed for a hunt. The chief wishes everyone a good morning and asks Alfred if he heard the loud wolves last night. The village chief announces that they are going on a mountain hunt and invites Alfred to join. He's stunned when Alfred casually mentions that he already patrolled the woods by himself. The chief loudly scolds Alfred, calling him reckless and dangerous for going out alone, regardless of his experience as a veteran adventurer. Alfred can only apologize for worrying him. Alfred tries to tell them not to worry, as the wolves promised not to attack. Seeing their disbelief, he realizes they think he's a liar and presents the massive fong Fem gave him as proof. Millet and the village chief are completely dumbfounded, their eyes wide with shock as they stare at the enormous fong in Alfred's hand. Just then, the rest of the hunting party arrives, ready to go. They stop in their tracks, wondering what's wrong with the speechless village chief. The other villagers also freeze in stunned silence, their jaws dropping at the sight of the gigantic wolf fong. The villagers crowd around Alfred, bombarding him with questions. He tries to explain, but they remain skeptical, with some even questioning if the fong is a fake. Millet, however, is filled with awe and admiration. She apologizes for ever doubting him and gives him a big hug, exclaiming how wonderful he is and comparing him to a legendary treasure. The village chief carefully inspects the fong. He confirms that he can tell by the smell that it is genuinely the fong of the magical wolf king, and that it was freshly extracted. He then recounts a village legend. 300 years ago, a hero who retired to this area battled a magical wolf king, eventually earning its respect. The wolf gave the hero its fong and became its master. To prove his story, the chief brings out the village's greatest treasure, the very same fong from the legend, bequeathed to them 300 years ago. The villagers realize this means Alfred's story is true. Millet, with wide-eyed wonder, puts it all together. This means the wolves will no longer pose a threat to Merg village. The realization dawns on everyone, and the villagers erupt in joyous celebration, cheering bonsai for Alfred San. The chief declares an all-night party, and a shocked Millet is drafted to help. Amidst the excitement, Alfred remembers the breakfast Millet had prepared and apologizes for missing it, but she tells him it's fine. He then asks about her little sister's health. Millet happily reports that her sister is recovering well and encourages Alfred to visit sometime, sure that her sister would be thrilled to meet him. Alfred reflects on his situation. He knows socializing is important in the countryside, but as a middle-aged man, another party after an all-nighter is painful. Still, he's happy to be celebrated. He looks around at the feast and happy faces, feeling delighted that the villagers have truly accepted him as one of their own. After the long day and even longer night, the sun has already set by the time Alfred finally returns to his cabin. Utterly exhausted, he collapses onto his bed. Later, in the dead of night, Alfred is fast asleep, finally getting his well-deserved rest. Suddenly, his eyes snap open. He senses a strange presence in his room, realizing he has a sudden, unexpected visitor. The chapter ends, leaving his identity a mystery. Chapter 3 begins with a cover page featuring Alfred sitting comfortably on what appears to be the giant, fluffy tail of a magical beast. The scene opens in Alfred's room as he wakes up, fondly recalling the magical wolf from the previous day, thinking it was cool. His thoughts drift back to the magnificent creature. He remembers how big, strong, and intelligent it was, its glorious fur glowing under the moonlight. But above all its other qualities, one thing stood out in his mind. It was incredibly fluffy. As Alfred fantasizes about how soft the fur must feel, he gets a sudden nosebleed from the overwhelming thought. His fantasy is cut short as he's startled by a sudden realization. He's shocked to find the very same magical wolf he was dreaming about is now lying right in front of him, inside his room. As Alfred sits on his bed, completely bewildered, a voice speaks directly into his mind, scolding him for his rude internal question of, "Who the hell are you?" He realizes with a shock that it's telepathy. The majestic wolf proudly confirms his suspicion, identifying itself as none other than the magical wolf king Fem. Fem then demonstrates its ability to change size, shrinking down. Alfred, however, is still preoccupied with his desire to touch the fluffy fur and happily remarks on it, much to Fem's annoyance, who tells him to stop treating it like a dog. Fem suddenly complains about being too slim, pointing out that it will look even skinnier when wet. Alfred is taken aback by this unexpected comment. With a serious expression, Fem reveals the true reason for its visit. It has a request. Alfred, recalling his earlier promise to help if they had concerns, watches as Fem follows him out the door. While Alfred brushes his teeth, Fem begins to explain its request. It sorrowfully states that while this area was once the domain of the magical wolves, things have changed. Fem illustrates the situation. After the previous magical wolf king passed away, a wild boar army began encroaching on their territory, driving the magical wolf army away from Merg village. Fem explains that as the descendant of the previous generation, it was called home to lead the pack. They fought back, but the magical boar boss proved to be surprisingly powerful, and they couldn't reclaim their feeding grounds. Alfred now understands why Fem is so slim. Fem continues, explaining that in their desperation, they planned an attack on the village but were stopped by Al. Alfred simply says he was lucky. Looking at Alfred with determination, Fem declares that this is a race against time and that it wants to lend its strength to Al and the others. Alfred face-bombs, finding it somewhat embarrassing that a magical wolf king is losing to mere wild boars. Fem looks flustered and agitated by his reaction. Fem retorts that Alfred's inability to notice its intrusion means his ability to sense killing intent is as dull as a plant's. Alfred, however, just finds Fem's angry little form adorable. Fem thanks Alfred for his gallant offer. Alfred, accepting the request, decides it's too late to act now and tells Fem to lead him to the wild boars tomorrow, as he is going to sleep. Fem seems surprised at how docile and readily Alfred agreed to help, simply saying, "Until tomorrow then." Alfred wakes up feeling cramped, only to find Fem sleeping together with him in his bed. He dismisses it and wonders why the wild boars are so strong, to which Fem replies it doesn't know. Fem mentions that it told the village chief about the fong Alfred gave it, and everyone was naturally shocked. Lying in bed, Alfred teasingly asks Fem if it has now recognized him as its master, causing the wolf to startle with a surprised expression. Alfred chuckles as Fem reverts to acting like an affectionate dog, nudging him playfully. He tells the wolf to cut it out as he tries to get a bit more sleep. But as the rooster crows, heralding the new day, Fem becomes even more insistent, licking his face to make sure he wakes up for their big day. Just as Alfred is getting ready, he's greeted by Millet, who has come to check if he's awake. With a cheerful smile, Millet announces that she's brought him breakfast, saving him the trouble of preparing it himself. Millet is immediately smitten with Fem, finding the wolf adorable and wanting to show it to her little sister. Alfred tries to explain that Fem isn't a pet, but the magical wolf king. Millet is completely shocked when Fem speaks, introducing itself as the magical wolf king. Alfred realizes with a sigh that this revelation must have startled her. Millet is in awe of Fem, calling her magnificent. Meanwhile, Alfred informs the village chief of his plans. After breakfast, seeing Millet so happy, Alfred feels it's all fine and they set off. The villagers enthusiastically see Alfred off, shouting that they are looking forward to the wild boar meat he'll bring back. As they journey, Fem transforms back into her enormous, true form, creating a powerful gust of wind. Alfred comments on her impressive size. Alfred asks if the previous magical wolf king was the one from the battle with the hero 3 years ago. Fem clarifies that was his son, meaning Fem is the grandchild of that legendary king, leaving Alfred impressed. Fem notices Alfred touching his knee and asks if it hurts, mentioning it's from a battle with the Demon King. Concerned, Fem suggests he slow down and even offers a ride. Fem says that while she doesn't normally let people ride her, she'll make an exception since she was the one who made the request. Alfred gratefully accepts, calling her a lifesaver as he hops on. Riding on Fem's back, Alfred is amazed at the incredible speed. Fem, happy to be of service, laughs and they continue onward. They soon arrive at their destination. Alfred looks out over a barren, desolate landscape and remarks on what an awful wasteland it is. Standing on a cliff overlooking the dead land, Alfred doubts any boars could live here. Fem ignores his skepticism and asks if he's ready. Suddenly, the ground trembles. Alfred senses an immense presence erupting from the wasteland below, catching him by surprise. A truly gigantic, monstrous wild boar, crackling with dark energy, emerges from the ground, towering over them. Instead of being intimidated, Alfred looks thrilled, exclaiming how bloody gigantic the boar is. Femme is exasperated, questioning why he looks so happy and pointing out that this is why she stood no chance against it. Alfred realizes this gigantic beast is the reason the area became a wasteland, having devoured everything. He knows that if it's not stopped, the entire forest will be annihilated. The monstrous boar lets out a roar, its body decaying and crumbling as it powers up. Femme frantically explains that this is a putrid, decaying boar and that its breath is poisonous. The warning comes too late as Alfred collapses from the toxic air. Gasping for air, Alfred yells at Femme for not warning him about the poison sooner. Femme, once again, is bewildered that he can still seem so happy while he's apparently dying. Struggling on the ground, Alfred grits his teeth. He declares that because the creature has already desolated this area, it absolutely cannot be left alive. With a look of intense concentration, Alfred decides that the situation warrants him using a bit of his true power and prepares to cast a spell. Alfred unleashes his powerful explosion magic. Femme asks if he killed it, but Alfred, with a confident smile, tells it not to jinx it. With a sigh of relief, Alfred stands before the massive, smoldering carcass of the boar. He notes that it was easy to go all out in the barren wasteland, glad he could end the threat in a single, decisive blow without causing any collateral damage. Thinking back to the cheering villagers, Alfred worries if the meat from this decaying, poisonous creature is even edible. Femme reassures him that it is, explaining that unlike poisonous snakes, the toxins aren't stored in the flesh. Alfred is suddenly surrounded by other magical wolves. Femme calmly introduces them as her followers, who have appeared now that the threat is gone. Alfred observes that both Femme and her followers are painfully slim. Deciding what to do, he begins cutting up the boar, taking just enough for the village. He tells the astonished wolves that they are free to have the rest. With a cheerful bon appetit, he lets the starving pack finally have their meal. As the wolves feast, Alfred looks on with a satisfied smile, glad that he could safely accomplish the request Femme had made of him. Returning to Merg village, Alfred is welcomed back by cheers. The villagers are delighted to see the meat, but the village chief completely collapses upon seeing the impossibly gigantic tusk. Millet is in high spirits, repeatedly yelling "amazing," while the village children, fascinated by Femme, gather around, exclaiming how fluffy the wolf is. Later, Alfred asks Millet how her little sister is doing. She replies that she's doing great and invites him, along with Femme and her sister Colette, to have dinner with them. They arrive at Millet's home, and she calls for her sister, waking her from a nap. The sleepy Colette asks who the visitor is, and Alfred politely introduces himself. Colette immediately recognizes his name, realizing he is the Mr. Alfred that Millet has been telling her about, the one who saved her. Millet expresses her deep gratitude to Alfred once more. She then gently tells Colette to lie down and rest until the food is ready, not wanting her to get sick again. As Millet leaves to prepare the meal, Colette's attention is immediately captured by Femme. She is absolutely captivated, finding the wolf cute, big, and incredibly fluffy. Colette shyly thanks Alfred for visiting and says she's glad to meet him. She then asks him to come closer so she can tell him a secret. As Alfred leans in, Colette gives him an affectionate kiss on the cheek. She explains with a giggle that it's her way of saying thank you, leaving Alfred flustered. She then innocently asks him, "Mister, what do you think of Big Sis?" Not waiting for an answer, Colette begins to praise her older sister, boasting that Millet is amazing, a delicious cook, and skilled at making things like clothes and baskets. A flashback shows a determined Millet, who, after their father died, became a doctor to support her younger sister Colette. Colette proudly states that tons of boys want Millet to be their bride, then turns to Alfred and puts him on the spot, asking directly, "What about you, mister? Do you like Big Sis?" A flustered Alfred stammers that he's never thought of her that way. Colette insists that her big sister likes him, because Millet is always cute when she's talking to him. With a bright smile, Colette declares that's why she wants him to take Millet as his bride. She adds that it doesn't have to be right away, and that she'll let him think about it. Just then, Millet returns to the room, asking what the two are talking about. Colette and a panicked Alfred quickly respond with nothing, trying to hide their secret conversation. As evening falls, the group sits down for dinner. Alfred takes a bite of the cooked boar meat and smiles, pleased with the taste. Alfred sincerely thanks Millet, telling her the meal is delicious. Millet shyly gives the credit to Alfred. Meanwhile, Colette excitedly asks how big the wild boar was. Trying to describe the sheer scale of the beast, Alfred tells her it was much, much bigger than the house, leaving Colette absolutely amazed. Millet comments that while animal-related damage has increased lately, she finds it frightening to hear of such a massive boar existing. Alfred jokingly remarks that if she were there, he'd have recruited her as a guard. Femme confidently reassures the group not to worry. Since Alfred has already defeated the enormous magical boar, they will hunt the remaining small fry, so they won't cause any more trouble. Millet reminds Colette that she hasn't finished her food, but Colette is too busy hugging the amazing Femme to pay attention. Looking at Alfred with a bright, trusting smile, Millet declares that they'll be fine because he and Femme will protect them. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, Alfred gives a confident thumbs up and reassures them. Leave it to us. As peace settles over the village at night, Alfred reflects that the threat is gone for now, and he can finally relax in the hot springs tomorrow. But as he looks out with a determined expression, he understands that his quiet life will inevitably attract more danger, and he resolves to protect this newfound peace. Chapter 4. I was the strongest sorcerer. And then I caught someone who claimed to be one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King army. The day begins with a big yawn from Alfred, who is enjoying his peaceful retirement. He relaxes outside, thinking that he has all the free time in the world now that he chose the comfortable job of a guard. Even Fom, the magical wolf king, is taking it easy, napping nearby. However, his peace is disturbed by a lingering thought: the gigantic magical boar that had been harassing even the magical wolf king. He couldn't shake the feeling that its unnatural growth was the result of some kind of sorcery or curse. As night falls, Alfred and Fom are fast asleep in their cabin. Suddenly, Fom jolts awake, sensing that someone is approaching the village. Alfred, still half asleep, is slow to react. Alfred sits up and pats his companion, praising her sharp senses. He wonders who could possibly be visiting at this hour. He steps outside to investigate. He finds it strange that someone would be loitering in this remote area in the middle of the night, especially since he doesn't sense any killing intent. His thoughts are interrupted by the sudden appearance of a high-heeled shoe landing right in front of him. A figure emerges from the darkness, pointing an accusatory finger. "So it really was you, Alfred," she yells. The intruder strikes a pose, introducing herself as Vivi, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King army. Alfred and Fom are completely bewildered, with Alfred openly admitting he has no idea who she is. Alfred dryly remarks that there are 5 of them now, and that the hero party had already defeated the supposed 4. He internally notes that while she seems to be a demon, her story doesn't add up. He continues to provoke her, mockingly asking for Heavenly King Sama why she's in a quiet countryside. His condescending attitude makes her furious. Vivi explodes with rage at his feigned innocence, screaming, "Do something? My ass!" She accuses him directly, yelling that he took away the boar she brought up and raised. "So you're the culprit," she declares. Now it's Alfred's turn to get angry. "Shut up," he roars. "I'm the one that's angry. Because you enlarged that boar, you screwed up the ecosystem, and everyone was in trouble." Vivi, completely ignoring his valid points, simply declares that Alfred is going to perish for causing trouble to the human race. She begins a spell incantation, gathering an enormous amount of magical power. Alfred acknowledges that this level of power is just what he'd expect from a demon. However, Alfred just smirks. He thinks to himself that only an amateur would perform such a long chant right in front of an enemy. He charges forward, yelling at her to brace herself. With a swift, precise karate chop to the head, he completely interrupts her spell. Vivi collapses to the ground, utterly stunned. She can't comprehend how a sorcerer would know a fundamental technique like breaking chants. Alfred looms over her, declaring he's going to beat some sense into her for all the trouble she's caused. Startled by his advance, Vivi panics and accidentally lets loose a fireball. The stray fireball flies harmlessly past Alfred, but scores a direct hit on his cabin roof, which immediately bursts into flames. Alfred lets out a horrified scream. "Oh, my cabin!" Taking advantage of the chaos, Fom leaps forward, pinning the stunned Vivi to the ground with a fierce growl. Vivi cries out in pain under the wolf's weight, but Alfred simply watches with a deadpan expression. "You aren't holding back even though she's crying," he thinks, impressed by Fom's mercilessness. His praise only serves to further enrage the helpless Vivi. Alfred sternly asks the captured demon, "You runt. Have you reflected?" While being violently shaken by Fom, Vivi quickly surrenders, crying, I have reflected. Let me go. Alfred decides that's enough and calls off his wolf companion. A terrified and teary-eyed Vivi holds out her hands as instructed, which Alfred then magically binds together. Now their prisoner, a bound Vivi, is led into a shed. What are you planning to do to me? She asks, her voice filled with fear. Inside the dilapidated cabin, Vivi strikes a dramatic pose, declaring, Even if you can have your way with my body, don't think you can have your way with my heart. Alfred watches on, completely unfazed by her antics. Lying on the floor, Vivi suddenly becomes flustered. Through the large hole in the roof, she thinks Alfred is looking at her forbidden regions. Alfred, however, is merely thinking to himself how the outside is now completely visible. Vivi laments her fate, crying out about the humiliation of being captured by an inferior human. Alfred bluntly tells her to just act normal. As Vivi continues to be lost in her own little world, Alfred and Fawn watch with deadpan expressions. He concludes that she's a total weirdo and is going to be a troublesome girl. Alfred tries to reason with the hysterical demon, assuring her he has no indecent intentions. He then gets to the point. Anyhow, you're going to fix the torched roof for me tomorrow. With the pleasantries out of the way, it's time for the main question. Having tricked Vivi by wrapping her up tightly, Alfred begins the interrogation. Why did you raise a magical boar? Speak. She defiantly tells him she has no reason to tell him. Vivi lets out a confident laugh, boasting that if he knew of her plans, he would cower in fear. She reveals that raising the magical boar was simply practice. With dramatic flair, she reveals her grand ambition. Ultimately, I'm aiming to grow a dragon. The magical boar was just a means to an end, intended to be food for the dragon. A perfect two birds with one stone plan in her eyes. Alfred is thoroughly disappointed. He thinks to himself, Vivi was an idiot. She confessed so easily. He dismisses her as a kid who can't control herself, though she continues to squirm and demand to be untied. However, a more serious thought crosses Alfred's mind. Her plan is indeed a bit frightening. What if she actually succeeds in raising a dragon? He presses on, asking what she would do after raising it, pointing out it would be troublesome. He then astutely asks if she plans to rebuild the Demon King army, noting that the technique she used to grow the boar couldn't be an everyday one. Vivi is stunned, stammering, how did you know? Seeing that he's figured it out, Vivi's demeanor shifts to one of smug pride. For an inferior creature, it looks like you've got quite the eye, she says with a wink. Alfred, meanwhile, is exasperated, thinking this is all too easy. She proudly explains how she covered all her bases by carving an intricate magic circle on the bottom of the swamp to fuel the boar's growth. Alfred realizes that her concealment technique must have been substantial for him not to have noticed it, concluding that she might be a more superior sorceress than he first thought, albeit an annoying one. He then stands up and declares, well then, we're going to clear the magic circles tomorrow. Vivi is shocked. Vivi protests, but Alfred cuts her off, reminding her that after clearing the circles, she still has to restore his roof. Fawn punctuates the order with a threatening growl. Terrified, Vivi immediately agrees. Alfred calmly bids her good night. The next morning, the villagers gather, gossiping in disbelief about the events of the previous night. Alfred addresses the worried villagers, assuring them that he's going to deal with the source of the trouble. The villagers are immensely relieved, with one exclaiming that without Alsan, their village would have been annihilated. The villagers praise him as their savior, thanking him profusely. Alfred tries to downplay it, but a cheerful elf girl insists, "It is a big deal." The elf girl, Millet, beams at Alfred with admiration. Meanwhile, Vivi, trying to regain some dignity, proudly puffs out her chest and redeclares her title as one of the 4 heavenly kings. Her declaration is lost on the local children, however. They have no idea what a 4 heavenly king is and are far more interested in her cool horns. Vivi is left flustered by their innocent reaction. Millet fusses over Alfred, asking if he was hurt fighting the big-shot demon. He calmly reassures her that he's fine and has the situation under control. Millet smiles, saying that while Vivi's 4 heavenly king title might just be self-proclaimed, it doesn't change the fact that Alsan is a strong and amazing person who protected their village. For that, she is truly grateful. Touched by her sincere gratitude, Alfred gives Millet a warm, sparkling smile. "Thank you, Millet," he says. Millet is visibly flustered and overjoyed by his simple words of thanks. As Alfred prepares to leave with his companions, the village chief calls out to him. The village chief asks if Alfred would be willing to bring Millet along as an observer. Seeing that Millet is already packed and ready to go, Alfred feels he can't refuse a direct request from the chief. Though he sighs internally at the pain of having another person to look after, Alfred agrees. He reassures Millet that he'll protect her if things get dangerous. As the group departs, the villagers, including Millet's younger sister, wave them off and wish them well. On their way to the swamp, Millet happily rides on Fam's back, remarking on how adorable Femchan is. Alfred walks alongside, leading the way. From Vivi's perspective, however, the ride is anything but cute. She sees Fam as a terrifying, drooling monster whose jaws are far too close for comfort. Vivi trembles with fear, convinced that the demonic wolf is just waiting for a chance to eat her. Alfred, noticing her paranoia, bluntly tells her to stop rambling. Soon, they arrive at their destination, a desolate, corrupted swamp filled with dead trees and dark, murky water. "We're here," Alfred announces grimly. The air is thick with a foul, venomous stench. Millet and Fam instinctively cover their noses. Millet can't help but be impressed that Alfred managed to defeat a magical boar that spewed such a horrible smell. The smell is so overpowering that even the mighty Fam is reduced to a teary-eyed mess, unable to block the scent. Seeing his companion in distress, Alfred decides he has to step in. Vivi, ever the opportunist, tries to spin the situation to her favor. She proudly claims that she was the one who discovered the rare poisonous magical boar and bound it to the magical circles. Alfred just dismisses her with a tired, "Yeah, whatever." As they venture further, Millet spots a creature in the murky water and excitedly points it out. Hey, Alsan. There's a huge lobster. It looks delicious." Alfred calmly corrects her, noting that it's actually a massive crawfish, and that the swamp itself seems to be shrinking. Alfred observes more bizarre wildlife, like a giant tree sparrow, and realizes the true extent of the problem. The magic from the circles wasn't just affecting the boar. It was spreading to the entire surrounding area. Vivi smugly confirms his observation, as if it was all part of her plan. Alfred states that since her magic is affecting the area, they have all the more reason to clear the circles. He turns to Vivi and tells her to hurry up and do it. She protests, arguing that the circles are buried under all the mud. Unsympathetic, Alfred hands her a small bucket. "In that case, scoop the mud out with that," he orders coldly. He reminds her that it's her responsibility, since she's the one who drew them in the first place. Vivi is aghast at the disrespect. "How disgraceful, you swine. Getting me to scoop out mud," she yells. However, a single, menacing roar from Fam is enough to make her quickly change her tune. As Vivi begrudgingly starts her pitiful task of scooping mud, Millet can't help but feel a bit sorry for her. Fam, however, looks on without a hint of sympathy. Alfred notes Millet's kindness, but states his own opinion on the matter. "I personally feel that Vivi's just reaping what she sowed," he says, his expression firm. He clarifies that he isn't trying to harass her, but her carelessness could have easily led to the village's annihilation. Deciding he's made his point, he calls out to her. "Vivi, there's another way to deal with this," he says, as magic circles begin to form around his hands. Sorcerers should use magic. Alfred unleashes his power, explaining his technique as he goes. While using wind magic to bundle the mud together, you make it float in the air with gravity magic. Vivi looks on in absolute shock. A gigantic, swirling vortex of mud and water rises from the swamp, horrifying both Millet and Vivi. "Vivi, what are you doing?" Alfred yells, pretending she's the one responsible. Holding the massive ball of mud aloft, Alfred issues his command. "Clear the magical circles now. And if you try anything funny, I'll drop it on you like this." Faced with such an overwhelming threat, Vivi obediently begins to clear the circles. A short while later, an exhausted Vivi announces that she's finished. Alfred gives her a cheerful thumbs up. "All right, thank you for the trouble," he says casually. With a flick of his wrist, the swamp is restored, and the corrupted water is cleared. Alfred declares the job done. Vivi, however, is still reeling from the display of power she just witnessed, muttering that only the Demon King himself should be able to use gravity magic, let alone two different attributes at once. Vivi exclaims that losing control of two elements could cause a spontaneous explosion. Alfred casually brushes off her concern, stating that two elements are no problem for him. "If I pushed myself," he adds with a smile, "I could even handle four." Vivi is left utterly speechless. Vivi can hardly believe what she's hearing. "You're kidding, right?" she stammers. She argues that even a powerful demon could only handle that kind of multi-elemental strain for a minute at most. Alfred simply retorts, "Does it look like I am?" With a confident, almost predatory grin, Alfred shatters her understanding of magic. "You underestimate me," he says coolly. "I can bear it for an hour." As the group heads back to the village, Millet joyfully hugs the giant crawfish, exclaiming how amazing magic is. Vivi, trudging behind them, can only stare at Alfred's back, thinking to herself what an ominous, inferior creature he is. Vivi mutters to herself about being covered in mud, while Alfred and Millet discuss their prize. Alfred casually wonders if the giant crawfish is edible, and Millet agrees that it looks big and delicious. Fawn proudly carries their future meal. Suddenly, Millet has a bright idea. "After we return, let's all head to the bath together," she announces cheerfully. Vivi looks on, thoroughly unimpressed with the suggestion. Alfred is completely flustered by her suggestion. "Mixed bath," he sputters. "Are you some lewd little girl?" Millet frantically clarifies that she meant separately. As she insists it was just a figure of speech, Alfred internally considers the offer, remembering that the village's famous hot springs were one of the reasons he came here in the first place. The story introduces Merg Village, where the protagonist works as a guard. It's described as a secluded yet affluent hot spring village, setting a peaceful and relaxing tone. After having dinner with Millet and her sister, Alfred is informed about the nice bathhouses by the village chief. Alfred, who hasn't had a proper bath in a while, looks visibly excited by the prospect. The village chief explains that there are plenty of hot springs on the outskirts of the village. He offers one to Alfred for private use, which Alfred gratefully accepts. He and his wolf companion, Fem, marvel at the sight of having a whole bath to themselves. As Alfred prepares to enter the bath, he tells Fem to wait outside, promising to wash her afterward. He seems to be looking forward to a moment of peace and quiet. However, Fem gives Alfred an irresistibly cute and pleading look, clearly wanting to join him in the hot spring. Alfred seems hesitant, caught off guard by her expression. Alfred reluctantly gives in, warning Fem not to kick up a fuss or get dirty on purpose. His smaller wolf companion looks on with a deadpan expression, contrasting with Fem's excitement. Finally entering the water, Alfred exclaims that this is his first real hot bath in a long time. Fem is overjoyed, splashing happily in the water, while the smaller wolf still seems unimpressed. Remembering proper bath etiquette, Alfred begins to wash his body thoroughly before soaking in the tub, knowing that's the correct way to do it. Alfred then proceeds to wash Fem, who seems to be enjoying the pampering. The smaller wolf also gets a good scrub, looking resigned to its fate. With everyone clean, Alfred and Fem relax together in the spacious hot spring, enjoying the serene atmosphere. As he soaks, Alfred remarks that it feels like the hot water is penetrating his injured knee. He then curiously asks Fem if dogs hate baths, to which she replies that she isn't a dog, so there's no problem. Alfred then asks if wolves hate baths too. Fem proudly states she isn't an everyday wolf. Meanwhile, Alfred is completely lost in the amazing feeling of the hot spring, even though it's currently summer. He muses that the bath will have a different kind of elegance in the winter. Feeling a bit dizzy, he decides to get out, but Fem protests, wanting to stay in the water a little longer. Elsewhere, a commotion starts as Colette, one of the 4 heavenly kings, loudly complains about not needing a bath. She insists she's different from inferior creatures and won't get dirty. The other girls appear, with Chloe telling Colette that she'll start to smell if she keeps sweating. Colette vehemently denies that she would ever smell bad. Suddenly, Alfred realizes the girls are at the same bathhouse. He quickly hides behind a rock, flustered and wondering why they are there, as he has morals and can't be seen in this situation. The scene cuts back to the girls. Chloe tries to persuade Vivi to wash up, noting it's a good chance to get their hair clean. Meanwhile, Colette is still stubbornly refusing, screaming that she hates baths. Colette gets a mischievous look in her eye, changing the subject and pointing her finger as if she's about to make a comment. She suddenly turns on Vivi, teasingly pointing out how large her chest is for an elf, and saying such things shouldn't be exposed. Vivi is caught completely off guard and flustered. Colette continues her teasing by grabbing Vivi's chest, causing Vivi to panic and her face to go blank with shock and embarrassment. Millet scolds Colette, telling the 4 heavenly king that no matter how much she rubs Big Sis's breasts, they won't come off. Vivi, still being groped, gets angry and says she's had enough. Hidden away, Alfred is having an internal crisis. He covers his eyes, trying to compose himself, and repeating that he is a gentleman and must not look, no matter what. Despite his efforts, Alfred is visibly blushing and sweating from the heat and the stress. Femme bluntly points out that his face is turning beet red. Just as he's about to lose his composure, Millet, who had been enjoying the water, suddenly pops up right in front of him. She cheerfully greets Mr. Al and Femme, completely oblivious to his predicament and inadvertently exposing his hiding spot to everyone. With Alfred discovered, Vivi immediately turns on him with a demonic expression. Ignoring Millet's innocent greeting, she angrily accuses him of peeping at a gathering of women's bodies and asks if he has a death wish, setting the stage for a violent misunderstanding. Before Alfred can explain, the enraged Vivi grabs a wooden bucket and throws it directly at his head, calling him an obscene sorcerer. Alfred tries to plead that it's all a misunderstanding, but it's too late. The impact, combined with the dizziness he already felt, is too much for Alfred. His memory becomes foggy as he loses consciousness and collapses into the water, with Millet crying out his name in alarm. Alfred slowly regains consciousness, his vision clearing to the sight of Millet looking down at him with a relieved expression, happy that he's finally awake. He finds himself sitting on a bench in the changing room, now fully dressed. Vivi, fanning herself, scoffs at him, calling him a pathetic and vulgar creature, while Colette looks on with a grumpy expression. Alfred recalls getting dizzy and fainting after Vivi threw the bucket at him. He internally admits how pathetic it was for an S-rank sorcerer like himself to faint, but still thanks the girls while insisting that he had reserved the bath. Millet, riding on Femme, asks if he's okay. Still flustered, Alfred tries to explain that the village chief recommended the place to him, and he was 100% sure it was reserved. It seems the information had come to the other girls through Colette. Millet cheerfully clarifies the misunderstanding. She explains that she heard from the village chief that while the hot spring was reserved for Alfred, he also said it was okay for Colette and the others to go too. A flashback shows an excited Colette, with Vivi and Chloe realizing the mix-up. Millet sincerely apologizes for the miscommunication on their part, with Chloe also looking remorseful. Seeing their apology, Alfred accepts it. As Millet offers to get him some water, he suddenly realizes he has been changed out of his wet clothes and wonders how. Chloe explains that the hot spring is imbued with magical minerals, which can easily make sorcerers feel nauseous. As they talk, Millet and Colette attend to Alfred, checking on his condition. Leaning in close, Millet whispers a shocking secret to Alfred. It was Big Sis Vivi who put his underwear on for him after he fainted. Alfred's eyes widen in utter disbelief and horror. Mortified by the revelation, Alfred buries his face in his hands, feeling deeply indebted to Millet for her honesty. As Femme watches, Millet gives a proud and cheerful thumbs up, happy to have helped. Now outside the bathhouse, Alfred and Femme begin to head home. He enjoys the nice breeze as Millet calls out for him to hurry up, noting that the others have already gone ahead. The other girls, full of energy after their bath, start racing down the path, playfully shouting that the last one to arrive misses dinner. Millet kindly tells Alfred to take his time, as she's the one who has to prepare the meal anyway. Watching the girls' joyful race, with Vivi shouting that food is a matter of life and death, Alfred can't help but smile. He reflects on the comfortable, peaceful moment and the kindness of the villagers. As he and Femme watch the girls run toward the village, Alfred contemplates his new life. He concludes that a life dedicated to protecting these people and moments isn't so bad after all.